Hello friends, she's back. She's vlogging. It's wild. It's really hot in here. I want you guys to be able to hear I also initially really wanted to like get cute and stuff for this vlog, but gray on gray is as good as it gets. I don't even really know where to start this vlog. It's been like a year since I've vlogged, and this isn't even really going to be a vlog. It's just going to be like a catch-up, I suppose. Well, that's a lie. I guess I vlogged when I was really pregnant. So yeah, obviously I had a baby. That was wild. He is 7 months old now, and he's doing great. He's teething right now, which is why I'm vlogging at 4:30 on a Sunday afternoon, because he is just a little fussy. So yeah, I don't even know where I'm gonna go with this vlog. Obviously it's gonna be like my birth story and postpartum, but like, I don't know. My birth story is just, it wasn't traumatic on paper. Like, on paper, it was literally just a regular birth. And that's what I think has made me so hesitant to share, because I think there's a lot of moms out there who have had actual traumatic births. I keep saying I don't know because I think I'm just avoiding starting the story, but I do want to preface this with, I do think we had a uniquely bad experience. We chose our OB and we chose our hospital because of the amazing like recommendations I'd heard about both the hospital and the doctor. And so I think that's why I was so extra let down, is because I went into it very expectant that I would have the birth that I wanted to if like my life and my child's life was not in danger. And so I also want to preface that with like, I prepared for months for low intervention, med free, like, but I also kept an open mind, knowing like I'm giving birth in a hospital, like they have hospital policy and birth can be unpredictable sometimes, but my OB is very hands off. I've heard that the nurses there are very supportive, like at the hospital. And so I'm like, unless something's crazy wrong, then I should be able to do this. And spoiler alert, that's not what happened. So I'm just going to start with saying I'm not going to name my OB or the doctor, or the hospital, or any nurses, because like I said, I think we had a uniquely bad experience. I have written out my entire birth story, or birth experience, I guess, for the hospital to turn in with a survey, because like we walked out of the hospital with a survey, but at less than 48 hours postpartum, like I was not in any mental space to write out an accurate review. This past week I've like clearly and concisely written out my birth story now that I've kind of processed. It took me all of 7 months to fully process everything, because like over the past 7 months I have like stayed up at night thinking about like what happened. And it's not because it's traumatic, it's because I have so many regrets of not advocating for myself, not hiring someone to advocate for me, thinking maybe I didn't like lay out my expectations clear enough, even though I met with a lead nurse and like took a tour and gave her my birth plans, gave my OB my birth plans, and like when I was being induced, went over them once again with whoever was like the lead nurse that day or whatever, and none of it happened. Like absolutely none of it happened. And so I think that's the worst part, is like knowing or thinking that I thought that I did everything in my power to set myself up for success, and then I was unnecessarily set up for failure by other people. So backstory. My OB, I think she's a wonderful person, and I really, really liked her for the first like 75% of pregnancy. I felt like she was very hands-off. I felt like she was very like, trust your body. I felt like she was just like, you know, birth is not an emergency. It's not like a medical emergency, and we aren't going to treat it as such. And if you feel good and everything else looks good, whatever. You do you, boo-boo. And that's what I really appreciated about her, because I'm very like, I do know my body. I know when something's wrong, and I know when things are going right. So I think it was at the beginning of August. I want to say around my 34 or 36 week appointment. I went in, had randomly, it wasn't even high blood pressure, it was just like higher than normal for me. But granted, like, this was about the time I started having really bad heartburn. I was really out of breath all the time. I was still continuing to be very active, but it was very hard. I could tell, like, there was no space in my body for my lungs, is what it felt like. So I was, like, huffing and puffing on the hallway, you know, because, like, you get up from the waiting room, you go and get on the scale, then you get off the scale, you huff and puff down to the room, and then you get up on the bed, and then you're, like, out of breath at that point. At least if you're me, you're out of breath at that point. And then they took my blood pressure, and it was high. And she was like, oh, okay, well, that's weird. Like, I'll just retake it later. She, like, the nurse was not concerned about it. Then she's trying to find my kid's heartbeat. Couldn't find it, which was horrible. Like, I can't even describe. It was probably only like a minute or two, but that was the worst minute or two of my life. I just, like, could not look at her. I was unwell. And this was my first appointment without my husband there, because he started a new job and he didn't have the time to take off yet, because we obviously were saving all his vacation time for after Arthur was born. So told me to go over to the hospital, because my OB is at her own little, like, center, like her own, like, whatever center, but she delivers out of a different hospital. Had me go over to the hospital for monitoring. So they hooked me up. Blood pressure's fine. I think they only did a urine test at that point. They didn't do a blood test. Nothing comes back in my pee. Baby's fine. Everything's fine. But they're still, like, concerned because my heart rate, or my blood pressure was high, and the baby's was supposedly, like, once they did find it in my doctor's office, it was low. But at the hospital, they were like, this is weird, like, nothing is abnormal on our end. 4 hours later of monitoring, my OB calls, oh, turns out our Doppler was malfunctioning. So that explains why my kid's heart rate was low, was because the Doppler was malfunctioning. So that was awesome. Loved that for us. But she was still, like, made a mental note, I guess, or whatever, note of my higher blood pressure. And so then I want to say that was at my 34-week appointment, because then I think it was like 2 weeks later that I came back and it was high again. Well, yeah, because I just, from that point on, every appointment, I was so nervous that, like, their Doppler wouldn't work and Arthur's heart rate would be low and I would be sent over to the hospital for monitoring, or, like, my heart rate or blood pressure would be high and I would get sent over. Like, I was just so nervous. So that kept happening. Gosh, I keep saying heart rate. My blood pressure kept being high, but only in her office. Like, keep in mind, like, I'm still running in the gym, walking daily. Like, I am taking care of myself. Like, I personally didn't think there was any cause for concern with my health. I guess it was my 39-week appointment. Heart rate's high again. Blood pressure, good Lord. Y'all better be glad I dropped out of nursing school. My blood pressure's high again, but again, only in her office. And I was, like, showing her, because I had been keeping track of it at home on my, like, a home, like, blood pressure thing. And I kept showing her, like, here are my measurements, whatever. but she still wasn't taking into account, like, it's only high in her office. And I was telling her, I was like, I'm nervous. Like, I told her nurse that, I'm like, I'm nervous because, like, you keep threatening to send me over to the hospital for monitoring, and I don't have the time or, frankly, the money to be billed for that anymore if it's just going to be for no reason. So 39 weeks, she's like, yeah, it's high, let's send you over. She was like, to my understanding, what I thought she said was, things come back abnormally, we're going to induce you on, I guess that was a Thursday, so I think it would have been Sunday night, that next Sunday night. I was like, okay, that's weird, because she is known for, like, she does not induce unless, like, you ask her after 40 weeks or there's a legitimate medical reason to induce. So I was like, okay, so, like, something's gotta be really wrong. But again, I went over to the hospital, blood test, pee test, monitors on my belly, blood pressure monitoring. Nothing is abnormal in the hospital anyways. So everything's fine. And so I just thought, okay, cool. I'm gonna call them tomorrow and be like, hey, everything's good. So I called the next morning, it was a Friday morning, called and was like, hey, my OB wanted me to call and talk with you guys about an induction. I'm like, I'm not saying no to the induction, but, like, given this new information at my hospital that nothing was out of the ordinary, do I still need to be induced? Like, let's talk about why you're saying that I should still be induced, or if that's what you're saying, or whatever. And the front desk, like, clerk or whatever, was like, okay, great, like, I'll have her like, medical assistant call you back. Great. So I'm actually FaceTiming one of my best friends who, yes, she had just had her baby, like, a month before that, maybe, like, a little bit over a month. And I get this message on my, like, patient portal on my app on my phone, and it said, your induction has been scheduled for Monday or whatever. Like, it said in, like, the notes, like, sorry, we couldn't get it scheduled for Sunday night, but we got it scheduled for Monday morning. And I, like, lost it, because I was just like, this was just the end of the rope for me, because she had kept talking induction, she'd kept talking like I was sick, and I'm like, I'm not sick, like, nothing's wrong with me. I'm not being given any evidence that something is wrong with me. I'm not being explained to why this induction is necessary, or why we're concerned about this high blood pressure, other than the fact that I could be preeclamptic. But it's like, there's no protein in my urine, my blood tests are coming back fine. The only time that my heart rate, blood pressure is high is in your office. Like, explain this to me, because I am not understanding. Here's where it's great. No, I did get a hold of the assistant, the nurse, or the medical assistant, or whatever. I explained all of that to her, like, through very, like, alligator tears. Like, I was just like, I told her, I was like, I'm not normally this emotional, but I'm at the end of my rope. Like, I've explained. Like, I do not want to be induced unless my life or my child's life is in danger. I do not see the proof for that. And she's like, let me talk with, Doctor, I'm not going to say my doctor's name because that's not appropriate. Let me talk to her and I'll get back with you, on whatever. So then by that point, I was just over it. I was like, I'm not getting induced on Monday unless my doctor can explain what's going on. So at that point, I'm just so sad and stressed and frustrated, I fell asleep. And I didn't wake up to her 3 calls when she was trying to call me back. But she would leave me a voicemail, and she's like, yeah, we canceled your induction. You are getting induced on Monday, but we want you to come in next week for an appointment. It's like, okay, that's fine. Like, I can do that. So I go in on Tuesday and I'm like 40 weeks and 3 days at that point. Going for an appointment, not dilated. She was like, I just need you to trust me. I was like, okay, but I didn't understand what was going on. Like, I need to be explained to, like, what's going on. She's like, well, pretty much I'm seeing the signs for like a possible, like you're at possible risk for preeclampsia. I'm sorry, there is a robin with a massive earthworm in his mouth and it's so cute. Do you see him? I don't know if you guys can see him. Okay, so she was like, I'm afraid you're at risk for preeclampsia. And I was like, that doesn't make any sense because like my heart, my blood pressure is fine, like outside of your office. Every time I get sent over to the hospital for monitoring, like, why are you here? Your urine's fine, your blood's fine, your heart rate's fine, everything's fine here. I was just like, I don't get it, and I really don't want to be induced. Like, that's been the plan this whole time. She's like, okay, well, here's the deal, is like, you're 40 weeks and 2 days. So, like, you really could go into labor at any point now. I'm going out of town on Thursday, so like in 2 days. And you're going to have to go into the hospital for a mandatory checkup on Saturday because you'll be 41 weeks and that's hospital policy. And if anything comes back abnormally, you're going to be admitted and I won't be there to deliver your baby. So that was fun because I was just like obviously like now that I've had a kid, I'm like, I don't care who delivers my kid. Like, at that point I was like, well, I've been with this doctor this whole time, like for a reason. I want her to deliver my kid. Like I trusted her. And I was like, wow, that would be really unfortunate if she wasn't here. So I was like, okay, well, I guess that I should go ahead and get induced because like she has to be here to deliver my kid. Yeah, that sucks because I really regret that. So literally she's like, okay, so just go over to the hospital right now. I was like, I don't have anything with me. Like, I need to go home. Like I need to call my husband. Like, can we just chill for half a second? So I called my husband, told him what was going on. I was like, okay, like, meet me at the house, whatever. Got the last of our bags packed. I mean, we were mostly packed, but we still had a few things that I needed to pack. I will say, like, once we got to the hospital, everything started out just fine. Like, nothing was out of the ordinary. The first couple nurses we had were amazing. I mean, we checked in at like 3, and so they were only there for a few hours before they went off their shift at like 7. So it was a nice like 4 hours with them. They were great. And I will say, like, when I started out and I was explaining like this is what I want, like they were, you know, talking with me. They were writing stuff on the board, taking note of my like wishes, and they were stepping me through everything, and that was great. Technically you're supposed to, I don't know how many like huddles you're supposed to have. Like, a huddle is when you like discuss with your birth team like what's going on, like what the next steps are, whatever. I had one and I was in labor for almost 24 hours. Again, I'm not a doctor, I'm not a nurse, but I feel like that's like nothing. I was like, hey, like I want to use the shower, I want to use like yoga ball, peanut ball, like whatever, like pain management, like non-medication, non-intervention, like pain management that the nurses can help me with, because I'd been told when I had taken that tour like a month earlier, and I explained this again to like one of the other head nurses, I was like, this is what I want. She's like, yes, like our nurses are fully equipped to like step you through and like help you, like we'll help you like change positions, we'll help you like be comfortable, blah blah blah. Like, I was like, okay, great. Okay, just keep that in mind. I assumed my birth team or whatever knew, okay, these are her wishes, we're gonna help her achieve this as well as we can. And I know like there's a lot of people giving birth. I know that I'm not the only patient, but at the same time I'm also like, why would I be told by someone that y'all would help me with this and then receive a completely different experience? Started me on Cytotec around 3 or 4, and that was just to like soften my cervix because I was not dilated at all, and my OB wanted to also get me on the Foley bulb, which, if you aren't familiar with Foley bulb, pretty much it's a water balloon that they put up you, and it helps to like dilate you. And generally, once the Foley bulb has like done as much as it can, you're usually around 4 or 5, or at least that's what I was told. Again, I'm not a doctor. So I started my Cytotec around like 3 or 4. got the Foley bulb around 5. Once I was on both the Cytotec and the Foley bulb, I did not get one break from contractions. Like, I have in my notes that I didn't think contractions were any farther than 30 seconds apart. And that was with me not being diet. But I was like, hey, my body's overreacting to medicine and like stuff like it normally does. Again, I know my body. And so I asked if this was normal, just to like double check. And I asked the nurse, I was like, hey, can I like use the shower? She's like, well, you have an IV, so we can't do that. When I asked like, hey, like what can we do? Like, I need a break from these contractions because there's no way I'm gonna make it without an epidural on 30 seconds between contractions when I'm barely even dilated. So she put, I think it's called like Turk or something. Anyways, it was supposed to take like help my body like rest, I guess. I don't really know what it was supposed to do. If that was the point, it did not do that. It actually made me really tense. Like, my muscles would just tense up involuntarily, and my heart would start palpitating. So that was lovely. And so on top of having only 30-second break between contractions, I like was super tense, which as we all know does not help with contractions, and I could barely breathe. So yay. So then I quickly was like, no, this is not it, sis. So they gave me something else, which I will say, like, yeah, it was a medication. It helped dull the pain, but like, that was a really good 2 hours that this other medication worked. But, yeah, it helped. It took the edge out of the contractions. I could still feel them, but they were dull. I also vaguely remember trying to explain the plot of The Bachelor to my mom and my cousin who were there, because the finale was on. I don't think I explained it very well because I was very loopy. This is a less flattering angle, but it's fine. My camera was sitting straight in the sun and the other angle, so I had to move it. But, okay, I don't really know where that cut me off, but pretty much when it came time for my next dose of Cytotec, they cut it in half because my body was obviously overreacting to the medication. So I know, like, at some point in this time frame I asked again if I could use a shower, and they're like, no, sorry, you have an IV, which, like, at that point I just kind of accepted it because, like, I was just so not in a good space because of, like, the medication, side effects from, like, the contractions. But looking back, I'm like, well, you guys are the ones that made me get an IV port anyways, like, because, like, they were so just because I have, like, the needle in my arm. I was like, well, yeah, you made me. Like, I asked multiple times if I could not get that in my arm, and you guys said, no, we have to. So I was like, looking back, I should have been like, okay, so cover it up or something like that. Anyways, so around midnight, my Foley bulb came out, which meant I was around 5 centimeters dilated, which was encouraging because I was like, well, I'm like halfway there. I've made it halfway. Like, I can do this. Kind of getting my second wind, feeling better. But then once Pitocin started, things went downhill. So I think I got Pitocin around like 1 or so, between 1 and 3, because the Foley bulb came out around midnight. They asked me if I wanted to try to labor on my own without Pitocin. I said yes. Like, I wanted to avoid Pitocin as long as I could. I knew it was inevitable, but I was like, let's just avoid it as long as possible. And I was like, I need my body, like, I need a break. Because like I said, I really did not get any break from contractions. Even when I was like on like the happy juice or whatever they gave me to dull the contractions, I was still like feeling them every 30 seconds to a minute. So then once I was trying to labor naturally, I could tell the contractions were getting farther and farther apart. I was like, this sucks. And at that point I was just like, well, I don't want to undo all the work I just did. So I went ahead and got on Pitocin. And I was just like trying to hype myself up, and I was like, okay, I can do this. Like, I can switch positions. I can, you know, ask again if I can get in the shower. I can use a peanut ball, yoga ball. I have a heating pad. And like the nurses know that that's what I want to do. Once they started me on Pitocin, they're like, okay, you're gonna want to sleep. You haven't really slept much today, like at all, actually. And they gave me a choice of like Benadryl or Ambien. I was like, well, if I'm gonna get knocked out, I may as well go all the way with the Ambien. So I just took one to start with because I was like, okay, like my body's overreacting. Let's just take one to start with. Couldn't fall asleep at all. Sucked. I was like, okay, let's just go for the full 2 because that's what they originally offered me. Nothing. So I think the hours from like 2 until 6 or 7 a.m. the morning that Arthur was born are like completely blocked out of my mind. It was horrible. I couldn't sleep. I was laboring unmedicated on Pitocin, and I was just like not, I feel like I was having an out-of-body experience. Like, I could not will my body to move. I couldn't think about like getting in a different position. I couldn't think about like getting in the shower, asking for the shower again, asking for a peanut ball. But at the same time, I'm like, why aren't they offering this? Like, why is no one trying to help me? And so it just sucks. Like, thinking back on the fact that I was never offered the help that I had originally requested when I was in a good state of mind, it just really sucks. Because I feel like I could have done this unmedicated if I had had some help. But I didn't. So the next thing I remember clearly is around like 5:30 or 6. And I feel like I need to have Ian like explain this all to you guys, because he was more obviously like cognizant than I was for this part. But I asked him to help me get out of bed around 5:30. I was like, I need to use the bathroom. Definitely had a contraction on the toilet. It was horrible. Which I should have stayed there. That probably would have progressed labor faster if I just stayed on the toilet. And I knew that in the back of my head, but I was like, I can't, like, whatever. Walked back out there, and Ian offered to help me in the bed, but I was like, wait, I want to labor, like, standing up, like, leaning on the IV pole. Like, it did help to stand up, I will say. I got my little combs. I was squeezing my combs, doing all the things that I could remember, that I could recall. And then I started asking the nurse, I was like, okay, like, I really don't want an epidural, but, like, if I do request one, like, am I going to be waiting a long time? I was just like, let's talk me through this. The next thing she said to me is something that, it was the most demoralizing moment of my life. Because I'd been preparing for so long for an unmedicated birth, as few interventions as possible. And like, again, yes, like I know, I always knew in the back of my mind that it might not be a possibility, but I did everything in my power to avoid an epidural. Not because I'm like judging people that get epidurals, but like that was just a goal. I'm very competitive with myself. I wanted to do it without. And then the nurse said this to me, pretty much just kicking me out while I was down. She said, and keep in mind, my Foley bulb was out, and I've been laboring on Pitocin for at least like 3 or 4 hours at that point. She said, well, you aren't even really in labor yet, so if you're in this much pain already, you may as well just get the epidural now. First off, I don't know what that means, because like, what in the HE double hockey sticks had I been doing for the past 12, 14 hours if I wasn't actually in labor yet? Second off, like, she knew how badly I did not want an epidural. I wasn't asking her to tell me whether or not to get one. I was asking her like what it would look like if I got one. Like, do I need to request it now and then like mentally prepare to wait a couple hours, because I know there's a lot of women on like giving birth, like I know there's one anesthesiologist. Like, what does this look like? What's the process? But she made a conscious choice to just kick me while I was down. And at that point I was like, no one believes in me. No one thinks I can do this. I think I can do this, but no one else wants to give me the support and the assistance that I need in this moment. So why am I just gonna keep putting myself through this if I don't have the support that I thought I was gonna get? So I got the epidural. It was relatively fast. I didn't really have to wait. I don't actually remember getting the epidural, and I went to sleep pretty quickly after that. I really hated the epidural. I couldn't feel anything like at all. I had to have Ian like squeeze my feet every 30 minutes or so because I was just like, I hate the feeling of like when my foot falls asleep, and that was like half my body. So it was horrible. I also was not given the option to like, I don't know, I feel like I've heard of other women since then that are like, oh yeah, I could like press a button and like it could give me more if I needed it, but it wasn't like on, like, you could pretty much control how much epidural medicine or whatever you have. Because when it came time to push, she was like, okay, like, can you feel that contraction? I was like, no. And that sucks because like like she's telling me to push, I don't know how when I can't feel anything down there. Like, I don't know what I'm doing. I can't feel what I'm pushing out. I just felt completely 100% out of control of this circumstance, out of control of my own body. It was so unnecessary. I mean, everything after that was fine. Like, I gave birth, it was fine. Arthur and I had zero bond at first, which was horrible. And I think at this point, this video is getting so long, I think I'm just going to save my postpartum update for another day because I'm really hot and sweaty out here, and I just need to go inside and stop thinking about this for a little bit. It's real hot in here. It really just somewhat go down a little bit. My cheeks are very rosy. Also, I have a freaking nose pimple. Okay, so where was I? Had Arthur, he was born, that was fine. Right after he was born, like when they're doing like the little measurements and taking his vitals and everything, we were told, hey, he has no tongue tie, no lip tie, look at that. You won't have any problems latching. False. Like, I just want to insert like the freaking Donald Trump meme. Wrong. And then like while we were in the hospital, like I would be asked like, oh, how long is he nursing for? And like me, who has no education on breastfeeding nursing, like no frame of reference, I was like, I don't know, like a literal couple of minutes, like if that. Because in my mind, like his stomach's the size of a freaking like almond, and I'm only producing a little bit of colostrum, and so he's getting like the 3 drops of colostrum when he needs it, or like he's getting the few drops of colostrum that he needs, so he's not gonna sit on my boob for a long time. Also, wrong. He was jaundiced. So, and he has like the blood type that would like keep his bilirubin levels high. And my battery's about to die. Hello. It is clearly not the same day as when I started filming, and that's a long story. So I was filming in my car, and then my camera died, so I filmed the rest of it on my phone, which has always worked in the past. And I need to scoot this chair back because I'm way too close, and I dropped my camera the last time I tried to scoot the actual camera back. So I filmed on my phone, had the whole rest of the video filmed on my phone, and then I could never get it to transfer to my computer to edit. So here we are, like 3 weeks later. It's nap time, and he's clearly not taking a nap. He's playing with his teddy bear. So we will see how long this lasts. So I'm gonna try to blaze through the last little bit because it's really not that much more, honestly. I mean, it's a lot, but there's only really a few important details. So I kind of left off where I was talking about how Arthur had jaundice, which was very common in kids. Like, we didn't know that at the time, but now that I've had friends, like, you know, in those first few days postpartum, I was like, oh my gosh, Arthur has jaundice, and they're like, yeah, so did my kid. Like not every kid, but a lot of kids are born with some level of jaundice. And so the day after Arthur was born, around like 5 in the morning, the pediatrician on call, who was actually our pediatrician, he came in just to check on us, say hi, introduce himself, and he talked about how overnight, like Arthur's first night, his bilirubin levels had risen, but not like not like a concerning amount. So we were like, okay, cool. Like obviously we wanted to take it seriously because like it is an issue, it should be addressed, but it was never something that we were overly like concerned about, just because our doctor, our pediatrician had said, yes, this is an issue, no, you shouldn't be like freaking out about it. Like if he wasn't concerned, I wasn't concerned. And I had told nurses and our pediatrician, I was like, listen, like we are not opposed to him being put under the lights, we aren't scared of that, we know that'll actually help, so like if y'all need to go ahead and do that, just do that. And he's like, no, it's not even close to the levels that we would put him under the lights for. So we weren't super concerned. Hello. So a couple hours later, our daytime nurse comes in, and like right off the bat I can tell something's a little bit off about her. Like not like off like you're weird, just off like you're a little more abrasive than the rest of our nurses. Like I'm someone who can obviously take like constructive criticism or like whatever, but I could just tell she was a little more, she had a little less bedside manner, but whatever, like I didn't let it bug me right off the bat. But pretty quickly after she came in, she started kind of questioning us, like, oh, how much is he eating? I'm like, well, I don't really know because no one's really directed me on how to breastfeed. I don't know what's going on. And so instead of like help me and be like, oh, well, you know, this is how you can tell, or let's, you know, let me put him on your boobs, see if I can tell how much he's eating, blah, blah, blah. She just went straight into, oh, well, we've read his charts and like his bilirubin levels are high. And I was like, yeah, I know, but you know, our pediatrician came in, he's not worried about it. And then she was like, no, we're gonna put him on formula. Like, did not even ask me if he could be on formula. She's like, we're gonna put him on formula because jaundice can be serious, and if the bilirubin levels get too high, they can result in kidney failure and even death. And I was like, you know, little old me sitting here less than 24 hours postpartum, I'm just like, what? Like, obviously I knew, yes, jaundice left, you know, unmonitored, uncared for, yeah, that can be serious, but like, we're monitoring him, we are caring for him. I'm so confused, like no one else is acting like this is a big deal except for this nurse. And so, but like, again, I'm in no shape to make decisions. And so I was just like, okay, give him formula. And it's not that I was anti-formula, I preferred him to be on my breast milk as much as I could. And I think that's the wish of most mothers. I don't think I'm out of the ordinary. She just made a big deal out of everything. And I didn't really know at the time because, again, I'm a first-time mom, very few hours postpartum. I didn't know that I could have just whipped up my breast pump that I brought with me and pumped some colostrum, because I didn't know any of these things. And maybe I should have educated myself before, but again, I felt like it was kind of the nurse's job to at least like guide me in the right direction. But anyways, I found out later after the lactation consultant came through finally, that I could have just pumped my colostrum and given that to him through like a syringe or something like that. But this crazy lady nurse made that, like, didn't even offer that as an option. And then this is the best part. After I did end up pumping my colostrum, once the lactation consultant came in, I had the fresh colostrum. And I looked at the nurse, the crazy lady nurse, and I was like, can I go ahead and give this to him? And she was like, well, he just had, you know, this many ounces of formula. He's probably pretty full, and it won't be good by the time, because it, you know, if you let it set out however many hours, then it's bad or whatever. She's like, it won't be good by the time he's hungry again. And she just poured it down the drain. Yeah, she tossed my colostrum, which, again, the audacity. So after that little fun experience, she just kept getting on our nerves by just like the hospital. I think every hospital has these, like the little brochures that they send you home with, that just about like breastfeeding, you know, just parenting 101, whatever. And like, I feel like once, again, correct me if I'm wrong, but I feel like once you bring these in, you give them to the parents, say, hey, read these, or hey, go to our website and watch these videos, they're helpful and they'll answer your questions about X, Y, and Z. Great, we'll do that when we can comprehend these and retain this information. she gave them to us and was like, really? She gave them to us and was like really abrasively like pushy about them and started like quizzing us on them. And I think that was either Thursday or Friday. I can't remember. But at one point she was literally quizzing us. I feel like that was Friday when I was even in an even worse condition. And I was just like, this is so annoying. And the worst part, or not the worst part, I guess I should say the most like offensive and annoying part was she kept like offensively like honing in on, oh, go to page whatever, I really want to make sure you read the part about the shaken babies. I'm like, I'm not gonna shake my baby. Like, yeah, I'm emotional and hormonal and pretty out of it right now, but I think I know to not shake my baby. So I think so all this is happening on Thursday. And Thursday was just a very long day, a rough day. And not the roughest. Friday was the worst, but Thursday was rough. So later that morning, probably around, I don't know, 11, noon, like this is close to 24 hours after I've given birth, close to 48 hours after I've like been admitted. Like we're pushing 48 hours on no sleep, no shower. And I knew I wasn't gonna get any sleep, but I knew I could at least take care of the shower part. So I asked the nurse, I was like, hey, you know, I haven't showered. Like I was wiped down, obviously, after I gave birth, like down there where it is gross and it matters. But I hadn't showered and I was still like, you know, sweaty. I had, you know, the whole induction process was just like, I was sweating the whole time. When you start to try to breastfeed, your pits start reeking this disgusting sewer rat smell, and I had that just all over me. I just needed a shower. And I knew like mentally if I could just shower and wash the nasty of the past like almost 48 hours off of me, I would be in better shape. Like I wouldn't be like, well, like I can handle anything, but I felt like I would be in a better mental state. So I look at Crazy Nurse and I'm like, hey, I haven't showered the whole time I've been here. Is there any way I can just take a shower real quick? I don't know if I have to ask you that. I don't even know why I was asking permission. Like I'm a grown adult. I can take a shower whenever I dang well please. But again, little me, not wanting to break any rules, not wanting to step on anyone's toes, asks Crazy Lady Nurse. And she was like, no, sorry. You can't do that until after your IV, like the IV port thing is taken out. And that won't happen until later today, probably, or possibly not even tomorrow until we, like, I don't know. I feel like they had to, I didn't even know why they were waiting. She never explained that to me. No one ever explained that to me, why they were waiting to take my IV port out. But so when she walked out of the room, it was just Ian and I lost. I was like, Ian, I have to take a shower. And hallelujah, praise Jesus, an angel walked into my room, the charge nurse, who I loved. She was amazing. I feel like she was the only one, she didn't really necessarily have to advocate for us, but I feel like she's the only one who, when I had a question about something, if I was like, am I being crazy or is this stupid? She was like, yeah, that's stupid. So she walks in the room. She's like, hey, how are you doing? Like she could definitely tell I was not well and something was off. I was like, listen, I have to shower. Crazy lady just told me I can't shower until I get this IV port taken out. Like I've got to shower. I just really, really, really need a shower. And she was like, no, I totally get it. And I don't know what she was talking about because we can just wrap it and like wrap it with like the plastic wrap type stuff to make sure it doesn't get wet, and then you're good to go. So she wrapped it and sent me on my merry way, told me a shower, whatever. I was like, oh, thank you, Jesus. So like after that, I was still, again, not great, but I was in a better mental state. I could change clothes, change my diaper, just like feel a little bit better about myself. Because the next day, it was Friday, and I don't know, it was just horrible. I don't think I went 5 minutes without crying the entire Friday. We got discharged, and we knew we were gonna get discharged on that Friday. Great, like if Arthur's jaundice level or bilirubin levels were fine, which they were still a little bit higher than they should have been, but it was nothing, like they were fine with sending us home. And I remember on that Friday, the lactation consultant came in and she was trying to give me like answer my questions, and give me advice and la 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 la. And again, the whole latching, she was trying to figure it out without the knowledge that he had a tongue and lip tie. I don't think I went 5 minutes without crying. It was just so horrible. I didn't have the mental capacity to even make yes or no decisions. Like, whenever the lactation consultant looked at me, or like if she just asked me like, hey, does that make sense? I'm pretty sure 80% of the time my answer was just to break down and cry because I was so overwhelmed. And she, like, God bless her, she was doing her job. And probably one of the only people that I encountered on our whole hospital stay that was doing her job. But I was just so overwhelmed with information and hormones and emotions and everything. I couldn't even make yes or no decisions. And so kind of the final straw was when we got a call from the billing department. It was probably only a few hours before we were supposed to be discharged. And they were like, so how will you be paying for your stay? And I looked at Ian and I was like, I just could not form words to talk to these people in the billing department. And so pretty much, because I just handed the phone to Ian, again, started crying, and pretty much what he said that they said was, they essentially made it sound like we could not leave the hospital without paying the remainder of our deductible. Which, in hindsight, and again, once the sweet angel from Jesus charge nurse came in and told us once again, that's wrong, that's not true, we realized that we should have said, no, we need to see an itemized bill first, and you need to talk with our insurance about that. We won't be paying. And they would have had to take that for an answer. They had no right to not discharge us. And it's not like they would have not just discharged us had we not paid, had we said, we would like to see an itemized bill, please, bill our insurance or whatever. But again, first-time parents, newly postpartum, no sleep, wide range of emotions and hormones. We did not know that. And so we ended up giving them the lots of money that was the remainder of our deductible. And then again, the very nice nurse was like, yeah, that's not it. They shouldn't have done that. And she agreed with us. That was very predatory. And again, another reason why we won't be going back to this hospital. But anyways, so after that, we got discharged, we went home, and I feel like at that point, I'm gonna just like leave the rest of that for my postpartum update. But honestly, I mean, I'm at this point, now that I'm ending this vlog, like I'm 8 months postpartum. I love my kid. Like I said in the beginning of the video, he was actually beginning to teeth when I first started filming this, and now he's popping his second tooth as I'm ending this, which is actually really funny. He fell asleep. Anyways, Ian's home. So 8 months postpartum, I do feel like I'm in a really good place. I don't feel like I'm completely mentally healed because recently one of our very good friends had a baby, and she pretty well had the exact birth that I wanted. She was still induced, but it was a much gentler procedure. They were very accommodating to her needs and wishes, to the point that she didn't even need an epidural. And she had so much support from the nurses, and they encouraged her and were very just supportive and informative to her, based on what she's told us. And she told us, we saw her just like 2 days after she gave birth. But like, while I'm was very happy for her, like that brought up a lot of emotions for me, and I was just like, dang, I have a lot of regret still surrounding my birth, just because I know if I had made different choices on an OB or my hospital, maybe my birth story could have been different, and I could have had a chance to accomplish the goals that I wanted to accomplish. I still stand by the fact that I do think we had a uniquely bad experience. I don't want to belittle the experiences of those who I know use my same OB, who have given birth at the same hospital I gave birth at. I know there are great experiences, and that comes with every hospital. However, I don't think that negates our terrible experience, and I just want to bring or shed light to the fact that, like, in hospitals, this happens, and I feel like if you want a birth similar to what I wanted, a hospital might not be the best route for you. I feel like we should have been treated with more care and support and understanding. But all that being said, if you're like a nurse, like a labor and delivery nurse or an obstetrician, or work in the hospital setting of any kind, like, tell me if I'm wrong. I'm always fine with being called out, because like it won't make me feel better, but it will make me feel more understanding of my experience, and just like, okay, well, if I don't go to a hospital for the next time I give birth, maybe that will give me a better chance. Look, I'm using your tripod.
Wow, you're using the tripod. I got you.
Would you like to share anything about the birth experience?
Well, you know, it hurt. I tore a little bit, but it's okay.
Do you want to share about your arm hair?
Yeah, okay, so here, I don't know what she told you already, but it devastated me pretty good. So, the nurse put a bracelet on me after the baby was born, and she got a lot of arm hair in there on the sticky part. She did not care for my health or wellness at all, which, you know, was kind of a trend, but, you know, that was probably the most pain anyone experienced that day, was all of these arm hairs got caught in the sticky, and then every time my arm, it hurt really bad. So yeah, it was devastating. Just, you know, just not very professional by the nurse. It's difficult,
Are you done
but
yet?
it's a battle every day.
Ugh.
You're welcome.
Thank you. Are you gonna go mow the grass?
Yeah, I am gonna go mow the grass.
Obviously, he's being very sarcastic about all of that. And he was very supportive of me the whole time. Also, I just want to say this. Like, obviously, Ian was so supportive the whole time. And even though we got zero support from our birth team, he was supportive as much as he could. We were just both so shell-shocked that we just didn't know which end was up. And I think that's why next time, like, obviously I know what birth is like now. My next birth experience, if we are lucky enough to get pregnant again in the future, possibly won't be the same. Like, I might have a harder pregnancy, or like the baby might need different, like, whatever. It might not be like as easy as my last pregnancy, but regardless, I'm still gonna shoot for the same, I'm still gonna have the same goals in mind, but I'm definitely changing OBs, definitely changing hospitals, probably gonna get a doula, which I will say we were very anti-doula, not because we judged people who use doulas, but I was just like, just one more person to talk at me, and I don't need another person in there talking at me while I'm giving birth. But now that we know, like, hey, just because they're a medical professional in a birth setting doesn't mean they have your best interests or needs or whatever in mind. So I think having a doula there to advocate for us, and who knows us better than these people who just, you know, are just seeing us there on the day of or whatever, you know what I mean? Pretty much we're thinking if we pay someone to advocate for us, maybe they'll have our best interests in mind. I'm not completely anti-hospital. I will say that. I think there's a lot of benefits of giving birth in the hospital. Like, for me, if I do choose to give birth in a birth center, like a literal birth center with no interventions, I won't have the option to get an epidural. So I'll really have to mentally prepare myself to fight through the contractions, to fight through like whatever the next birth might bring me. But whereas in a hospital, if I did choose to do a hospital again, I would still have that option, like if I wanted to get an epidural or whatever. But my goal is still unmedicated, no epidural for the next birth. Where that will be, I don't know. On that note, I think I'm gonna wrap this up, finally, a month later.
if you want to see more content from me, don't forget to hit the like button for this video and go subscribe to my channel. And let me know in the comments what you want to see next, if you enjoyed this video, any questions, or general comments you might have. So anyways, don't forget to like and subscribe. We'll see you next time. Bye friends.